This season of Truly Independent is supported by the Help Them See Foundation. Help Them See is a nonprofit dedicated to supporting feature films that inspire faith, hope, and connection. By partnering with filmmakers, the Help Them See Foundation brings meaningful stories to life and shares them with audiences worldwide, making a lasting cultural impact through the power of cinema. Learn more and discover how you can be part of the movement by visiting helpthemseefoundation.org. Welcome to Truly Independent. I'm Garrett Batty alongside my co-host Darren Smith. Each week, we'll go in depth with guests, industry experts, and we'll even share our own experiences, all with the goal of demystifying the independent film process. This season, it's all about the script, from the first spark of an idea to a polished final draft, breaking it down for scheduling, budgeting, and ultimately shooting. We'll walk through every step it takes to get from page to production. Welcome to Truly Independent.
Hello, Garrett. How's it going?
Good, Darren. How are you?
I'm good, man. Now, your office changed. You have a bed in your office now.
I
What
brought
happened?
the bed in the office. It's that time. We're doing overnights. I am calling in from Idaho.
Hey.
We are headed up here for a family reunion this week.
Amazing.
So it's nice to get out of the heat a little bit.
I bet. Yeah, it's like triple digits all week here in Utah. So we're sweating a lot this week.
Yeah.
But there's no clean tie-in to what we're talking about today, so I'm just going to hard pivot. We've got a cool conversation today, I think. So one of the reasons we started this podcast was to document in as close to real time as possible the things we're working on, the things we're doing, what we're trying, what we're testing, what's working, what's not working. And today is going to be one of those episodes. We're talking about test shoots. We're talking about you're in the middle of prep or maybe early development for the Pearl, and you've got some stuff that you've been working on this week, so we're going to dive in on that. And I'm curious to learn because you just kind of gave me the log line of the episode today, so I'm going to be the audience surrogate and pester you with questions. So give us maybe some context around where you're at with the Pearl and what you were up to over the last couple weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully this will apply. And I love how you framed that we do want this to be a podcast that helps independent filmmakers kind of demystify that process. And this, I was realizing, is very much a part of that process. Just the importance of test shooting, and as hard as that might be to like commit resources and time to test shooting, just the value that comes from it and the reasons that we do it. So yes, last Friday, we had a cast and crew get together for a full day of shooting at a studio for the Pearl, and this could be for any independent movie, but we wanted to test certain production techniques that we'd like to apply to the Pearl during production. And so we said, look, before we commit to full-blown like shooting, 3 weeks, 4 weeks of shooting this way, let's test and see what works and what doesn't, and so we can refine and make sure that when we do shoot the actual movie, that we're efficiently getting what we're going to need. So that was kind of the proposal to the crew and different crew that I brought on for this test shoot. And I found that everybody was very supportive and very on board and willing to, work. It's a lot of work to put together a day of shooting, but a lot of people are very excited about it. So that's what we did.
Nice. So when we often hear like camera tests, and we're thinking, does the costume work? Does the makeup work? Does the camera work? Like you're doing that sort of stuff. Is that what you were focused on? Like testing maybe more of the technical or artistic aspects, or was it other aspects? Were you testing out actors? Were you testing out crew? What was the outcome you were hoping for by doing a day of test shooting?
I would say this is different than a camera test. A screen test where you're screen testing an actor and things like that. With that, it might not be. We're looking at using a lot of this hybrid filmmaking where we're getting actual human performances and real performances from actors and supporting them with generated backgrounds or locations. And we're very, very excited about that. And I think that that's going to be a process that is now available to independent filmmakers and is going to really make a difference in the quality and scale of story that we can tell. But we wanted to test that. So yes, there's more than a camera test, more than just showing up with your DP and testing a costume to see if it mores or the height of an actor or whatever, or different lenses and things like that. We wanted to do a full-blown day of production where we have a call sheet and call time, and cast and crew are showing up and walk through what that might be like and how this new process would work in a full production schedule. So it was fascinating. I mean, initially I reached out to a producer, Jen Ritchie. Is that how you say her last name? Ricci?
It's either Ricci or Ricky, but I always say Ricci.
Okay. Well, we'll have to have her on the podcast and ask her straight up. But she was fantastic. She's a local producer who also happens to have a giant prop warehouse, and set deck warehouse. And so I reached out to her and said, here's what we're planning on doing. We'd like to do a test shoot. We're looking for a location and some props to support this. And she was very, very agreeable and excited about just this new technique that we're trying. And so she came in 100%. Like, she was very, very supportive. So that'd be a first tip. Like, start to plan, and identify crew that are going to help either with the film and test out that working relationship, or who are willing to help out with a test shoot for perhaps a discounted rate, or pay them for a full rate. I mean, it's an actual day of production that you're doing.
Yeah. So you basically told everybody we're going to test this hybrid approach end to end, who's in. And had anyone done it before? I know I'm going a little off script of our questions and stuff that we prepared, but like, these are the things that are popping into my head that I don't want to forget. Good. So you kind of know what you're going in to test. And the question is this going to work for our indie film that's not a $20 or $200 million budget, but much less than that? So can we do it, is the question going in. Did you have anybody that you invited that had already done this hybrid workflow before, or was everybody going, we're going to figure it out? No one's ever done it.
That's a great question. And yes, I reached out to 2 visual effects supervisors and kind of experts, and prior to the shoot consulted with those that were doing this hybrid model. So I consulted with the guys over at Wonder Studios, is it Wonder Studios?
The Wonder Project.
Yes, who are doing hybrid filmmaking. We're comparing notes, and I spent a few weeks going through their process, like, okay, what are we doing? How does this work? And what is needed, and so forth, and learning as much as they were willing to share, and we'll continue to work and learn with them. And then I reached out to different visual effects supervisors and said, this is what we're planning. What obstacles might we run into? We're planning on shooting essentially in a gray box theater, and so the visual effects supervisor said, look, we've never done this type of thing, but as a VFX supervisor, these are the things that we would often run into when footage is shot that way. And so that was very, very helpful. And we even had them on set with us as well. We said, if we do the film this way, they're going to be part of the process, and so let's get them on set. And that was incredibly helpful because we were testing, and so it was important that on the day that we didn't get lost in shooting retakes of performance. We're saying, look, let's shoot it, and we have our actors perform it one way, great. Whether or not we liked what we got performance-wise, the VFX guys could say, okay, now we should test it without this element, and to see if we would work. So it felt like, it's contradictory to, like, are we going to make our day? And I constantly had to remind myself, this is why we're here.
I think that's our third point, is know what you're testing and keep that front and center, because if you got lost in the weeds of tweaking performances, you may have only gotten one scene for the day, and then you're like, we've got 3 angles of one scene. That's not a great test, whereas you probably got through a lot more in a day because you were focused on how many different things can we try and see if it works, and how far can we push this, because that's going to help you when you get to production. So I'm curious, indie films are on tight budgets, and when we start talking about spending money on development, whether it be with Brotherhood, we flew to LA and flew to New York and put ourselves up in hotels and spent money on those trips to test the movie in a very basic form, Ross sitting in front of a piano performing the script top to bottom. And that was thousands of dollars that we spent over 2 months to develop, to test, to see if the story worked. So you're now doing a similar thing. You're saying, we're going to spend some money, we're going to test to see not necessarily if the story works, but does this hybrid approach work? How did you think about that when it came to the percentage of your budget that you're going to put into development?
That was a very big hurdle for me mentally to cross. It was like, well, I'm spending money that I know is not going to be on screen for the end of this movie. And I had to just mentally work through the fact that saying, no, this is actually going to be very much on screen in the fiber of every shot, because if this works, then all of this money spent in research, R&D, is going to impact exactly what we're shooting every day of this shoot. And so yes, we did spend money. We spent thousands of dollars to get everybody together. One of the things we wanted to test is a new DP and a new camera process, right? So we brought in a Steadicam and a Trinity operator, brought in his crew so that we could test out him and make sure that his workflow worked with this production, what this production requires. And we also tested out an LED wall, and we shot on a volume stage. And so all of these things cost money, but walking away from that, we have now this incredible awareness of what it would take to shoot the movie that way. And ultimately, should we go in that direction, it will save us significant amounts of money. So, it's important to spend a little now to avoid spending a lot later.
How much of it for you after that day, and I know you probably haven't gotten through the full workflow yet because you still have post-production and stuff to do, but how much of it is, oh, this is going to save us tons of money, versus, oh, this expands what's possible and we can do more with the money that we do have?
So I had a North Star going in saying, what is the purpose of this test? And I had to continually be guided by that. Like, what is my North Star? What is the goal? And, if we go, oh, that looks cool, we don't want to just run in that direction. I'm going to say, does this align with our North Star? Which, as a filmmaker, I would recommend choosing something. And that's going to change for every project. But this one, we said, look, will this process work by enabling us to save money without compromising the scale that we get from spending a certain amount? And so, yes, we have yet to determine that, because we will go through the production process. There's a heavy post element with this technique, but we're very close. I'm probably 4 days away from being able to answer that question. And if the answer is yes, we go 100% we're shooting in this way. If the answer is no, we go great, 100% we're shooting the other way, and we know with clarity what we're trying to do.
So can you walk us through that a little bit? What did you have to bring into that test day? And then what are you going to do post-test day that's going to be like the actual post-production process?
Yeah, definitely. And it was important, as far as what we did, I was reminded as an independent film director, and hopefully this will be a tip, just the importance of the role of communicating your vision clearly and your idea clearly. And so with everybody that we brought on, we brought on a producer, brought on our DP, he brought in his team, the producer brought in an art department, and I spent time with each individual or each department head, clearly communicating and writing up, okay, this is what we're doing. I went through the script and determined 2 scenes that would be very different looking scenes, an interior group scene and an exterior back and forth scene involving a vehicle. I said, look, these are 2 pivotal scenes in the film. They have a variety of looks and locations, and if the hybrid system works for both of these scenes, then it'll work for the film. And then I broke those down into different shot lists, as you typically would, but shot lists specific for what we wanted to test. So it was not, okay, we got to get coverage, we got to get wide establishing and then go in for mediums and coverage and inserts. But it was like, okay, for this technique, we know that in the film, whether or not in this scene or not, there's a series of whip hands. Well, will that work with an LED wall? Or will that cut with our Steadicam movement that we want to do? And so I planned those into the shot list and communicated the shot list. We also had a vehicle scene. So we said, okay, how much of the vehicle do we need to have on stage? Are we cutting the top of a car? Will it work with just 2 chairs and a guy holding a paper plate? And we knew that we were going to shoot a variety of ways. And so on set, there were no surprises of how hokey it may have looked. Everyone was just on board. I mean, we knew going in, okay, this is going to be silly. We also knew we wanted to test different wardrobe states. So one actor might be in full wardrobe, and the actor to whom they're acting across is in, t-shirt and jeans. For our 1960s, East Germany spy heist comedy, the footage looks funny, but now we're sending that over to our VFX team, and we'll see. It's worked in our very, very casual tests, and now we're seeing, hey, in this full production mode, will this work?
There's a project in my mind that I grew up reading this book that my mom would read to me at night. So I'm not going to share what the movie is because I don't want anyone to go steal the idea from me. But it's one of these things that 5-10 years ago, the only way I saw putting it together was like the Jungle Book treatment that Jon Favreau did, of actor and on a green screen or on a stage, and everything else is visual effects. That costs whatever it costs, $150 million to do that kind of movie. And I'm like, that's not it. That's not an independent project. But the better these tools get, the more realistic it becomes to do something like that on a $10 or $20 million budget. And maybe someday it's a $1 to $2 million budget. And at that point, it's like, man, you got a crew in a volume stage or a gray box, and you're shooting the very minimal elements that you need the actors to actually interact with. Everything else is LED or generated, or that opens up possibilities that weren't previously available, which excites me because it means more people. It's the democratization principle that I think we've talked about before on this. It's like democratization is great. More people get to be creative and do cool things. We get more stories in the world. It also means we're going to have a lot more noise, and the signal is going to be harder to find. But that's the exciting thing for me, is like how to become that signal in the noise. So I love that you're doing this. I hope that you're capturing all of the process as you go, that you've got maybe a behind the scenes person, or at very least you've got the raw camera test edit that you could put up next to the finished version for the test so that people can see, oh man, they're doing it. They're making it work on this little budget.
Darren, you mentioned that movie idea in our last episode, or in one of our previous episodes when we were talking about AI. And I love hearing you mention that and kind of like allow yourself to kind of put that movie back into your realm of possibility, And I think that to me is what was happening with this process as well. We're saying, oh, this is a new level of creativity that really, hopefully, democratizes these large-scale stories that we can now tell. And that was the constant feeling that I got on set, and is the reason we're doing these types of tests. Like, could this work? Would it work? How do we make it work? And it's working, now what?
A specific question, when you were on set, did you have any real-time assets that were generating? Were you able to pull up a monitor and see the stuff behind the actors on the LED wall or anything like that? Or was it all just kind of slates or blank stuff that you were shooting to then do it all in post?
So prior to shooting, we developed a library of backgrounds that could be put on this giant LED wall. So that was one of the tests, in our medium shots, when we're not showing floor or exposing the edges of the wall, when the wall just filled the background. How did we need to light? What we need to shoot to show that, to not have to run the image through a hybrid process, post process. And that was, so yes, we could see that, and that was very exciting. One of the realizations in the test was just, even if we're shooting in a gray box, how helpful it is for the actors and everybody to see what at least kind of the end idea was. So having these generated, I had scene stills with characters in them, and then also just blank backgrounds. And so I could show them and say, okay, this is the background, this is the location, this is where we're at. And they go, oh, very cool. And it just informs the DP. It's like, okay, we're doing this, and here's a good idea to cover it. So yes, the short answer is yes, we did, and it was very helpful.
Nice. Man, crazy. So tell me about some of the other things you learned from the process. Yeah. What was hard? What was easier than you thought? What was something that you hadn't anticipated going in? Give us all the juicy details.
There are a couple of moments on set that where we learned things that I didn't expect to learn, or that I was so grateful. I'm like, oh, this is the epiphany moment of why we're doing a test. And the first one was this vehicle scene. So we're shooting, a scene where we've got two actors, and they're pulling up their vehicle to a border checkpoint, and Stasi guard comes out and interrogates them in a comedic way. And so we shot our wide, and we said, okay, we want to test this with the 2-chair approach. We had 2 chairs and a steering wheel rig, and we had a steering wheel mounted to a C-stand. And just, again, it looks so community theater. And so, our actors are in there doing their thing, and we thought, okay, how do we get this car to move? And we go, okay, we realize, okay, it's the camera movement. And as we're doing this, the realization was like, okay, well, the camera is sort of breaking the physics of what a car the space of what the car would take up. And so we need to, so the thought was, okay, next we're going to tape off the border of the car. So we kind of measure out, or tape is, say, this is no man's land, don't go in there. So the camera could go around there now, or at least if it did cross that line, we knew that was going to be a cut point. But then, so on a second take, the actors get farther through their scene and they have to open the door. And we thought, well, we got to pantomime. That's not going to work if they're pantomiming. If an actor's physically holding this, it might not work. And so we flew in 2 C-stand, fake doors, so that the actor could physically push something open, an arm on a head. We were able to rotate the door. By the end of shooting this, we kind of had a car mapped out, at least the body of a car, out of, grip equipment, which was very exciting because it was like, okay, if this works, this is how we could shoot this. But it was that process of getting everybody together, creatively solving problems. It was like, oh, it's not about can we shoot a car scene. It's about can we solve the obstacles that are going to come up in this hybrid model? And the answer was yes. We'll figure out a way to solve it. We had to elevate everybody because a car maybe sits higher than the 2 chairs. So and yes, Darren, we recorded the behind the scenes process, so it would be a cool video to show, okay, these are the steps that we learned.
About 2 months ago, I was down at the Produced By conference, and it was on the Universal lot. And they had tours that were going through some of their post facilities, so you could see a mixed room and a color edit bay or a color bay, and they had an LED stage. So 2 walls, a bunch of lights, actually 3 walls because there was a ceiling wall as well. Yeah. And they had a car placed in there and a camera on a Fisher dolly, and you're just like, okay, let's see how this looks. And you throw it up and you look at the video screen, and it's all generating it in real time. It's actually captured footage that they're then mapping to the LED screen and mapping to all the lights. And you're watching it, you're like, this is seamless. There is not a single thing that looks not real, as if it were midnight on an LA street. And you're like, holy cow, that changes the game, because I'm sitting here as an indie filmmaker going, man, we had 4 times where we had to set up green screens for driving shots, and our movie doesn't have a lot of driving, so it wasn't a huge deal. But man, if you had a movie that had a lot of driving, how much easier it would be to just shoot it all on a stage on a volume with a bunch of LED walls to say, okay, we're doing a cross-country desert type thing. We don't have to move the entire crew for every shot. You can just be in the car, progressively go through the thing. You have someone drive the length of it with a 360 camera, and that's 1 day of filming or whatever, or 2 days of that stuff, and then you go and you're in the car. So the fact that you're now replacing the car, it's like that's one extra level of, you could still use the LED wall for your exterior stuff, but then you don't have to worry about all the other elements that are there. So it's kind of crazy. I'm curious when, you don't need to answer this, but I'm curious, when do we hit the point where it's kind of sixes between, oh, we can bring a car on, or we could just generate it and it's the same cost. Yeah. It's actually easier for these reasons and harder for these reasons, and it becomes like sixes at that point.
Well, I'm sure we'll get this footage back by the time we record next episode, so we'll have a very clear idea of whether or not this will work. I was reminded on set as we were shooting this, I had this image in the back of my mind of Steven Spielberg shooting War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, and there's a shot that they did in his studio, and there's an actual vehicle that they cut the top off of and put their 4 actors and the 5 actors in the car, and the car's on a gimbal, and they're wiggling it around as the camera's trying to capture this. And we've gone from that to 4 chairs on a platform surrounded by C-stands, and the camera is the gimbal, because no matter what direction it's shooting, it's going to be replaced. And it was
Yeah.
really exciting to say, here's some large-scale shots that are now available to independent filmmakers.
That's pretty nuts. We heard from the team that works with Doug Liman on his Satoshi movie, the gray that was shot 100% in a gray box. We heard from people that work at Deep Voodoo, which is Trey Parker and Matt Stone's company that's doing kind of deep fake stuff, but face replacements and hair replacements and aging and all that kind of stuff. And that was 2 months ago. And I was like, man, this is available right now at, let's call it $10 to $20 million budget ranges. I think it's 1 to 5 years that it's available to $1 to $2 million budgets, because it just won't take as much. It won't take as much processing power. The tokens won't cost as much, whatever it is. It's just going to get cheaper and easier, and more people will know how to do it. It's pretty nuts, man. So you're at the point now where you're still waiting on the footage to go through post-process, but do you have any sense yet of whether or not this will be part of your process for the feature?
I walked away very encouraged. And again, we shot in one place, we shot about 9 pages of our script. And to be able to do that, you know, a 9-page day is usually just cruising through things, right? And it might be one location, heavy dialogue, and limited actors. And that wasn't the case with this. I mean, we shot 2 different locations, all the setups we needed, and we shot from about 8 until 4. And everybody walked away still friends. So if it works, then yes, I think that will. I think I'm about a week away from knowing whether or not this is going to be the direction we take this show. One other thing too is, as an independent filmmaker, we normally just go, okay, we have to do everything. And I was reminded that we're building a team to test this. And so, over the weekend, I edited all the footage and put together my scenes for this film. And it was like, okay, this is great. Now I'm exporting and getting ready to bring it into AI. And I thought, no, I've got to use the team. And so it's been super nice to be able to just export the clips and offload those to our VFX supervisors, whether it's them or me sitting behind, replacing the backgrounds, the work is getting done. But if it's them, then everybody stays on board and they feel like they're a part of it and invest in it. And so I'm excited to kind of employ that process as well.
So maybe one last question that I have. Do you feel, we talked about all the things you gain from this, more pages, more opportunities, more locations, more potential as far as scale and what you can do on the same budget. Do you feel like there was anything that was lost? Do you feel like you sacrificed or had to do a trade-off or gave up some things that you really don't want to as a director or as a creative or as a filmmaker? Because I think a lot of the criticism around AI is it's going to take all our jobs, but as you've said, there were the same size crew as a normal day, if not more, because you had visual effects people involved. So is there anything, whether it be creatively or from a crew standpoint or from a process standpoint, that you felt like was a trade-off, or you felt like you had to let go of or you had to lose because of doing a potential hybrid process?
That's a great question, and as I was looking around on set, I kept asking myself, okay, who's not here? Who do we not get to work with? What friendships have we developed via the traditional model of filmmaking, and not only friendships, but what craftspeople have contributed that are no longer contributing. And I mean, Darren, I don't think anybody was missing. We still had we had John May, our sound guy, and we had our actors. For this particular test, we did not employ hair and makeup professionals or wardrobe, but we will. What I did feel was this much more collaborative, creative process where really the community that was coming together were very supportive of this. If this works, if this test proves effective, then it will open up the opportunity for each one of those individuals to honestly to get to work more potentially. As other filmmakers adopt this process, I think that If one of the reasons they're not working is because we can't afford to hire them, I think that no longer is an issue.
Man, oh man, I cannot wait to see. I want to see the side by side or the back to back of what you shot and edited this last weekend and what you got from it from a week. If it works after a week of post,
Yeah.
for 2 scenes,
Yeah.
that's huge because that's way faster than what it would have taken pure VFX wise, right?
It was fascinating because even sending the clips off, the VFX artist came back and said, "Hey, these are a few things we're missing, and we could easily create those." Like, okay, you need a background. Even on set, as we're testing, and we'd say, "We'd like to get this side angle," and we said, "Well, we don't have a background for that on the LED wall. We don't have a set built for that." And our VFX artist says, "Yeah, we do," and he took our front-facing image, created a side image, threw it up on the LED wall, and everybody was blown away. So it's pretty amazing.
Can you say a little more about what that means? Because I know what you're saying there, but the audience may not.
Well, that was my 15-year-old son, who is he's unfortunately been bit with the filmmaking bug as much as I have. And so he was on set and proved indispensable to our VFX guy when VFX said, "Well, we don't have that background." Michael said, "Show me
Give
the
me 30
front-facing image."
seconds.
And, yeah, give me 30 seconds, and went back and came out with.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that's a tip for any person getting into film: make yourself indispensable on set. Here's a 15-year-old kid that wanted to come hang out and saw what needed to happen and did it, and now he is an integral part of the process.
All right, we're going to keep close tabs on what you're up to with this project because that sounds very exciting. And if you're going to pioneer a truly independent hybrid model, I don't know that there's probably a lot of people that are doing full generative AI, but that's different. I think that's easier than what you're doing because you still have to work with a crew and with actors and have the constraints of hours in a day and meal breaks and all the other financial aspects of it. Whereas fully generative, you can just hang out in your room on your computer and do the thing. I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm saying that what you're doing, I think, is harder and not necessarily more risky. It sounds like you've de-risked a lot of it through this test. So I'm very curious to stay on top of this and kind of get the real-time updates as you go through it, because are you still going to go to Germany or Hungary or wherever or Romania? Are you still going to go and do a unit there? Does it move that unit to interior stage in Utah where you can go home every night? That's what I'm curious to see how it plays out and how it impacts the film you get to make, because I read an early draft of this and I was like, dude, this is $2.5 million minimum. You're overseas and you got all this cast and crew and it's period and it's all these things. I'm like, but now 2 years later, look at what's possible. That was not even a consideration 2 years ago, and you're doing it right now. You're literally doing it. So, gosh, that's exciting. That just makes me very excited for the future of filmmaking.
That's exactly right. For everybody listening, there's opportunity for more films to be made with a team. And I agree. The idea is not to eliminate, I don't know, Darren, you can't prompt soul. And that's what we captured on Friday. It was like, okay, this is this creative spirit that really doesn't come from sitting, one person sitting behind a computer.
Yeah. I don't think there's any loss of creative, whatever it is, by saying we hired someone to go and scout and find this location with a lot of trees, or we just generated a lot of trees. I don't think that's robbing anybody of anything. To the location scouts out there that are going to be angry with that comment, but
I really appreciated the fact that when we were in Romania doing location scouting, we had capturing all sorts of images. I mean, that's our team that's saying, "Oh, this is what you want your movie to look like, great," and that's the library we're using to generate these backgrounds. So it's still putting the work in, doing what is in the real world, and employing people. And then and having everybody now adopt this new process.
Man, I can't wait to see it. All right, Garrett, thank you for that update. We're excited to hear more in future episodes. And I'm very curious to hear and see the comments for this one, because we might be breaking some people's brains by saying we're very actively figuring out how to use AI in our productions as truly independent filmmakers. I'm curious if that's poking some people or what. So let us know in the comments what you think about this. And if you have questions and follow-ups for Garrett, let us know. We'll do them in a future episode. So thanks, Garrett. It's good stuff.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, good chat.
Okay, see you.
This season of Truly Independent is supported by the Help Them See Foundation. Help Them See is a nonprofit dedicated to supporting feature films that inspire faith, hope, and connection. By partnering with filmmakers, the Help Them See Foundation brings meaningful stories to life and shares them with audiences worldwide, making a lasting cultural impact through the power of cinema. Learn more and discover how you can be part of the movement by visiting helpthemseefoundation.org. Thanks for joining us. Please share and subscribe for future episodes. Today's episode was edited by Sam Hansen and produced by 3 Coin Productions.